Thank you for taking the time to tune in with us. Here on Unclamped, we recognize that every patient and caregiver carries a story, each one shaped by unique experiences, challenges, and triumphs. Before we dive in, we want to take a few minutes to introduce ourselves so you can get to know the voices behind the mic, the journeys that brought us together here, and the passion that fuels this space. Because this isn't just a podcast, it really is about community, and every story matters. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Unclamped. I'm Jayme, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Crystal and Gaby. Today, we're focusing on the work that often happens behind the scenes, but has an incredible impact on patients and families. Nurses Week is a time to shine light on the incredible work nurses do, and that makes a profound difference for our patients and families. So today, we're honored to speak with one of Boston Children's Hospital's intestinal rehabilitation nurses, Carol Cheney. Carol, thank you so much for joining us. I've known Carol for 18 years, and when we first met, she was working in home infusion. She was one of the very first nurses that helped me transition home, providing me education, guidance, and unwavering support during a critical time. So, Carol, welcome, thank you for the impact you continue to make every day.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for asking. So, yeah, I'm happy to be a part of today. So, thanks.
Great. Awesome. Well, let's get started. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into nursing.
Well, it's funny because my journey into nursing was not straightforward at all. I mean, I was a musical theater major. I really thought that Broadway would be calling me. And my mother is, the OG, right? She was the original nurse, and I'm one of 5 daughters. But no, had no interest in anything medical. Really thought, the bright lights. But I went to school for a very brief time and realized that I did not have the drive that it would take to be willing to give up everything, right? I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have kind of a pretty traditional life. And I found that for musical theater, that really wasn't possible. If you wanted to really give it your all, it would be at really kind of letting other things go. So I got a job working at a hospital because my mother worked at a hospital, and that was a connection, which, always need the connections. And it was funny because I learned I had incredible mentors. I had incredible nurses that I worked with, and I started, in the trenches. So I was doing all the things, and I was all over the hospital. Got to have great relationships, got to be mentored and taught by incredible nurses. There are 5 girls in my family, and 4 out of the 5 of us are actually nurses. So
I love that.
Yeah. So it's really kind of cool. And so I kind of came to it. And what I did know, it's so funny because now I work in a hospital setting, but what I did know was really what started me was just being able to be in patients' homes. And I started in home infusion, and I got my feet wet in home infusion, where I was, seeing patients from birth to 100 and, multiple therapies. And then I really focused on nutrition support, and I continued to focus on nutrition support. And then I worked for, several companies, one, which was a national company, which that's how I met Gaby, and got to do some teaching and to get to meet you, Jayme, and your family. So it was really a main focus for me, is just home nutrition support. I would go into hospitals. I would teach families how to do the therapies so that they could have life and have quality of life and go home and live their lives to the fullest. So that I was able to kind of be a part of the family, go in, do what I needed to do, foster independence and relationship building. As you say, we've known each other for 18 years. Gaby, I've known you for how many? Is it
9?
9 years?
Yeah.
Because I remember him when he was a baby. And
Yeah.
yeah. So I remember, it's funny because I remember going home with you and Tony and going into your apartment and like just trying to figure out like how we were going to organize you, and you guys were rock stars. I still remember that day. So, and I remember coming to Pennsylvania, seeing Jayme and then the clan and Olivia. So yeah, it was just, it gave a more personal touch to me, the hands-on for nursing support and for family support, because we're not in an unknown environment where you are vulnerable. This is your turf, right? It's your home. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that part was huge because it put you on different footing. It put us all in a very different footing where you were empowered and you were independent and you were taking care of business. And that I was honored to actually be a part of that. So you could.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I think it's like so influential. That transition to home is so important. It's so impactful. So for listeners who may be new to PN, how would you describe that role? I mean, I feel like you already did in some, in some ways and in the nuances that you shared of getting to know people, but I mean, there's a lot of aversion to having someone in your home,
Oh,
right? I mean,
yeah,
like you need the help, you need the support, but oftentimes this is the first time
right,
that you have to welcome a stranger in and give
right.
that level of trust.
Right. And
So,
it's also
what would
feeling
you say?
judged. It's like feeling
Right.
judged in that somebody is looking at you and thinking maybe not the best, or, what are they thinking about me or my home situation, or I have a dog. What are they going to think about that? Or, just kind of the chaos of life, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, to me, that was always the sweet spot because you would go into different people's homes and, you can have this preconceived idea of how somebody is going to be in a hospital setting, right? You're doing teaching, you're doing all these things, you're thinking, oh, I don't know that this is going to be successful. And then you go to their home and it's like, it's a different world. And people who you might not necessarily think would be successful are incredible at what they do, right? Because you put them in their environment where they can thrive, where they can show really what their lives are, and they do great. And then you may have situations where you think somebody's going to be, oh, it'll be no big deal, and then they get home and they really struggle. So you have an opportunity, um, on their turf, on in their
Yeah.
setting.
Meet a patient where they're at.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that.
And one of the cool things now, so I've been at Children's, so I worked um, for a company, and I was all over the country at different intestinal rehabilitation centers, teaching and training and bringing patients home. But I am based out of Boston, and because I'm based out of Boston, I spent a huge amount of time at Boston Children's. Um, and for me, this was like the icing on the cake because I got to work at Children's, which is where I really wanted to be because,
Mm.
I've kind of
Mm-hmm.
crested the wave. You may be able to tell by the gray hair, but I've been doing this a really long time, and I knew that when I finished this ride, I wanted to be closer to home, and I also wanted to work someplace where I was proud to be there and where I really felt like I was part of an incredible team, and that was the key part. It was being part of a team of everybody who was equally passionate. So, yeah, I hit the jackpot. Um, and it's
I
really,
love that.
yeah, it's really cool too because there are kiddos who I've seen and who I've known since birth. I mean,
Yep.
last week I was high-fiving kids who are going to college, right? And I've
Oh,
known them since they were a year old, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
going to school, they're going to college, and they're telling me their acceptance letters, and and having them have the opportunity to meet each other. So as they're going off to college, I'm introducing two young men to each other who are going off to college, who are kind of living it, and like they're exchanging phone numbers because they're both going to be living the same kind of experience and away from home.
Yeah.
So it's those are just those full circle moments that are just really incredible. They really are. It's kind of just awe inspiring. So
yeah. That's amazing. I love that you're at Children's because I remember the day they told us you were no longer with the infusion
yeah,
pharmacy. And
yeah,
I was like, what?
yeah,
And then like a week later, you walk in through the doors at our clinic.
yep,
And
yep,
I was like, yes.
yeah.
Um, all right. So talking a little bit about, home PN,
Mhm.
what do you see is like patients and families' biggest fears or concerns at first?
Well, the biggest fear I think always is, are they going to do something to hurt their child, right? If you're
Yeah.
talking about kids, there it's the fear of the parent is, what if I miss something, or what if I do
Hmm.
something, if I miss something, or I inadvertently hurt my child, how am I going to deal with that? And because it's also, you've lived this life, so there are some things that are very gray, but there are things that are very black and white. And as educators and as nurses, we recognize that people get from point A to point B differently, but there are things that we do not vary on. We don't, there are certain ways that you do things and you don't change. Crystal's given a face. I don't know what that means. But it's just, there are ways that you cannot, there are things that you do that you will always do. And when we teach and when we train and when we educate and all of the education materials, there's a lot of things that we just say, you know what? Know it, memorize it, learn it like the back of your hand, because there will be times where people are going to question what you're doing. And if you've ever had a nurse come in from the home who has a different opinion on how things are done, you're the expert, right? You're the one who has to say, nope, this is how I was trained. Nope, this is the education that was performed. This is how I do it. If you have a question, then you talk to my team. You talk to the people who trained me. But for now, this is how I do it. And that's sometimes hard because you're considered kind of a novice, right? You're not a nurse by training, though you should be by all the experiences that you have. But the expectation is that you're opening up your home to somebody who's going to come in who may not do it the way that you do. And there are certain things that, yeah, you can have a little bit of wiggle room, but the main piece, there's no varying from it. So I think for families, that's really hard. And again, I think, Jayme, you hit it too when you said, you're opening up your home to people who are going to come in and who are going to look at how you were doing things. And are you going to feel judged? Are you going to feel that what you do isn't good enough or is lacking, or, it makes you very vulnerable. And I think for an adult who's performing cares on themselves as well, it's like, this is self-care, and recognizing that in order for you to live the fullest life that you can and that you want, there are certain ways that you have to be, right? And it's not convenient all the time. It's not easy. But I have always said, what you have doesn't define you. It doesn't define who you are as a person. It doesn't define the life that you're going to have. It's just what you have. So you have to find ways in order to make it work, because it's not who you are, right?
Yeah, definitely. What for families who are in the hospital right now, um, and haven't been home yet, what would you say the expectations of like a teaching should be, or the process of going home? I know it's different
Right.
for every hospital and every company, but
Right.
what does a typical teaching look like?
So I can say from both sides, because I used to do the teaching when patients would go home, and we did set up standards. Our process was, we did 3 separate teach backs, right? So you would go, and those teaches could take an hour, 3 hours, and it would take a long period of time. Which is not to say that teaching didn't continue when you came home, but in a 3 teach method, at least when I was teaching it, we would look and we would determine, okay, so we're at teach number 3 and they're not really getting it. This isn't really where we want to be. And we had the ability and the luxury to say, no, we're partnering here. We want this to be a safe discharge. We want this to be a successful discharge. So we're going to take more time. And that was, that was like one of the best things that you can do. I mean, where I work now, Children's has 5 teaches, and they also have a sim. So they have a simulation lab so that families actually go to a simulation experience and they get to see what it's like to have a baby crying and to have all different sounds coming in the room, and setting up and prepping PN and looking at it and doing all those things. In kind of the safety of a simulation lab, where they're not, they're just, it's all about education. It's all about training. What I will say to families who are in the hospital setting, it will happen. I promise you. I know you feel like your kid is never going home, or that you're never going to go home. But it does happen. And the other thing that I will always tell families before they go home, and I probably said it to both of you, was that, the first week, just lean into it. You're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be anxious. Just breathe, because it's okay to not feel comfortable in your surroundings and to not be comfortable with the setting, and just kind of embrace it. Because I promise you that in a week, when we talk, or I see you in a week, you're going to be better and it's going to be easier. And each day that you do it, it gets easier. Do you guys remember, Gabby and Jayme, do you remember how long it took you when you first started prepping PN and hooking up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Oh my
took me
God.
at least an hour.
Yeah.
Now it's like 10
15,
minutes.
20 minutes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I remember freaking out right before we came home and being like, I don't have a closed lid trash can just because I felt like everything needed to be contained. No, I know it sounds, listen, I mean, that's who I am. And I was like, I literally started crying in Target. And my mom's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I just need a closed lid trash can because I can't have any germs. I can't have anything.
Yep.
Because I was so worried. Like you said, I didn't want to hurt her.
Right.
I just wanted to keep her safe. And I knew that this was the best path forward. But
Mm-hmm.
I also understood how serious it was.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
it's hard.
Yeah, I
It took a long
remember,
time.
Carol, you had us record the teach or record me hooking up the first night at home.
Yep.
And that was super helpful because I didn't feel like, I felt like that was enough. Like the next night I looked at it, I was like, okay, I did this last night. I could do it. And
Right.
that was super helpful.
Right. And I think it's also when you go home, it's really just the beginning, right? So it's not, there's kind of the pass off of, okay, we've done the teaching in the hospital, we've done all this, but now we're going home and now it's real life. So one of the greatest, I think, supports is having somebody in the home. When you get home, you have a very clear expectation even before you get home, but knowing that it really just starts. I mean, I had a family, they were triplets, three little kids in Pittsburgh. And two out of the three were okay and didn't need nutrition support, but their daughter did. And they had triplets. So, like, there they have three 5-month-old babies, and they're doing PN hookup with mom and dad. I'm holding one of the babies. Dad's holding the other baby. We got the third baby.
Oh my God.
And we're doing all these things. And I just remember looking at her, looking at mom and thinking, oh, she was so overwhelmed. And what we found was in the subsequent days, again, one of the great gifts of the company that I used to work for was that there was no time limit, right? I stayed until the job was done. So having the ability to go back the next morning and say, okay, we're really organizing you. Now we're going to put stuff in bins. And you can probably all agree with this, that the more organized you are and the systems that you have in place that have, and you can take them from people who have gone before you, an incredible support group network. Nobody knows better than a mother or a patient who's done it. And they can give you great inside tips, how to do things. And with this mom, it was having a couple of days just to kind of get her settled, get her organized, and just continue to just build on what she already learned, increasing her kind of self-confidence. And then it was like Nanny McPhee, right? If you ever saw the movie Nanny McPhee, it's like, you know what, I think when you need me, or when you want me, then I have to go. But when you need me is when I'll be there, right? Because there's a difference. There's a difference between want and need. And, in a perfect world, we'd all have people who would stay forever and help and do all these things.
Right.
Crystal's like, nope, move along.
Nope. Nice to meet you, Carol. I want you in and out of my house, and I do never want to see you again.
Yeah, it's true. And
Oh my God.
it's true because you're doing it, you're living it, you want it to happen. And sometimes what would also happen, and there's kind of this role where, like, I knew that you were worrying about your kids. I was worrying about you, right? So my question was always to you is, are you eating? Are you taking care of yourself? Who fed you? Like, because I know this baby is being loved and this baby is being watched because you're taking care of this baby, but I want to make sure that someone's taking care of you. And that, as I've gotten older, that has definitely become more of a role because I look at you all as daughters, right? And in that type of a situation, you want somebody to be looking kind of at the whole unit, right? Because it's not just about the patient, It's not just about the baby, it's not just about the adult, it's about the family that steps in and fundamentally determines the success or failure of how they're going to do at home. So you all have to be supported.
That's a great point. And with central line care at home and PN education, it does, for me, it depends on the person. What you described was not my life. at all.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm okay with that because it sounds like torture to me.
She's a straight shooter, Carol.
I like that.
To be blunt and honest, I'm like, show me and get out of my life. Like,
because you want to live your life. And you know what? I think also great part about being a good nurse is reading the room. So if you can do what needs to be done and I can get in and get out, I'm gone. Trust me.
I'm like, and there's great ways I love how you're saying organization. The biggest joke on here probably is these two girls love kids. I think they're a waste of time. Can't stand them. So find the organization that works for you, not for who you're asking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So get multiple opinions. So, but it's very nice to meet you, and thank you for being on here. With that, I wanted to shift and talk a little bit about the central line really at home and keeping your central line safe at home.
Right.
What are some of the biggest, there's obviously great differences, which shouldn't necessarily be great differences between the home and the hospital. Let's just make that a little caveat. But there are. So can you go over some of them and what things people should be thinking about at home and in the hospital?
I mean, honestly, my thought is it's better at home, right? Because you've got less cooks in the kitchen. You can control your environment. You can control the space of which you are working in. So like, we have a big thing where we use a cookie sheet, because I've been to people's homes where they do not have an environment that is necessarily clean. And I need to create the safest space that I can in the smallest amount of space and say, this is your clean space. This is something you can manage. This is something that you can clean. This is something that you can wipe down with a Clorox cleanup. This is your space. And anything that you do having to do with your central line takes place in that space, because that's the one thing that we can control, right? That one little area, that one little square, we control that. I can't control whether you've got 3 dogs. I can't control that. I can't control whether you've got cats. But what I can control is the place where you go, we're going to make it as safe as we possibly can for you. So, and again, Crystal, it comes down to 2, like, there are some things, I agree with you. There should be standards, and it should be the same hospital, home, anywhere. It should all be the same. But you know what? We live in a big country, and there are different standards for every institution that you go to. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've been to many institutions, and it's a different party at each one of them. Right?
Which is why I was making the funny faces when you said there's things you memorize, because what I know from my personal background is I get told regularly by nurses that that's not right. And I tell them, okay, have a good life. See you later. Get out of my house or get out of my hospital room.
Right. But the key part to it is, if it's not broken, my thing is this, if it's not broken, I'm not fixing it. I'm not going to fix it, because if you get from point A to point B, you do not have line infections. Your technique is good. If it's different or varies from what I do, if you're not infected and you've got a great line and it's working and you are not sick and you are not getting infections, then what you're doing is working. Where I take notice is when it's not working, right? Because I think probably one of the greatest downfalls that people do is they get complacent, right? So that they, you have a routine, you stick to that routine, you're not going to have a problem. It's when you cut corners. It's when you go, oh God, I'm downstairs and I don't have an alcohol prep pad because they're all upstairs, but I'm really tired. It's been a really long day. And you know what? It's not a big deal. It's just one time. I'm just going to hook up. Right. So it's those types of things where we're very black and white. It's like, this is how we teach it. This is how we do it. I'm not going to be the person who says to you, you're not doing it right. You have to do it differently. What I might say to you back in my previous days was, okay, it's not broken. These are my concerns, and this is what I see, but this is what you do. Prove me wrong. It's working, right? So I think what I have found is in home care, it's very much getting ready for plan B, right? It's like, what happens with this? Because in a hospital setting, it's all plan A. And they have these very altruistic ways of thinking, oh, it's always like this. And I'm like, you have no idea what it's like, because you don't know what it's like to walk to a person's home. And you don't know what it's like to walk through that door and think, oh, okay, let's get the cookie sheet because we have no place to clean that's going to be set up and going to be safe here.
The first time I heard about the cookie sheet was with these two ladies. I never used the cookie sheet, never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Still don't use it. Maybe if I'm camping, I might use one,
but you know what? But you're looking at it. You're looking at that like right now, your environment, your home environment works because you're able to have a space that you're able to wipe down, that you're able to keep clean. So it works for you. But like there are some people that they don't have it. And it's just creating the safest kind of environment that they can.
Which brings us to what are some warning signs that you would think? And also for wound care. So not just for PN, but also can you go over some of the EN warning signs? Because I know you're also have vast experience in enteral nutrition.
Yes.
So what are some like wound care tips you would have for patient or families? And some warning signs besides fever.
Yeah, I know. Well, so there's a couple of things, and it's funny because when we talk about enteral therapy, when you have a child who has a central line, or you as a person, as an adult, have a central line, it is drummed into your head. This is your lifeline. This is your lifeline. This is your lifeline. If you get an infection, it can be serious. It can be life altering. It can be life ending. So you are given that from the get-go. People look at a G-tube and they go, it's not a big deal. You have a G-tube. Who cares? You have a central line. Take care of that central line and do all the TPN and do all that stuff. But I will tell you, the phone calls that I get are from mothers on a Friday afternoon at 4:00 because the G-tube is got granulation tissue and it's leaking and it's uncomfortable and it's red. And that's their tipping point, right? That is the thing that throws them. They handled everything, but nobody told them about the G-tube and what to expect. So when it goes south and it's going, and it's leaking through their clothes or leaking through your clothes and you're like, no matter what I do, it's uncomfortable. Those are the things that like I spend a lot of time talking about, and enteral therapy specifically. So things when we talk about enteral therapy, you're talking about most people have a low profile gastrostomy tube, or they could have a peg tube. So either they could have a difference between the two is a low profile gastrostomy tube is a button. It's tiny. It goes into a tract. The tract is established. It takes about 12 weeks for it to be fully healed and to be considered really healed and whole. Or you could have a peg tube if you're older. Typically, with an older adult, they might put a peg tube in. And for some reason, G-tube buttons are not big in the adult population. I don't know. No. I don't know why. I think, honestly, a lot of it comes down to either size, like how big the person is, or having somebody who knows what's out there for product, right? Yeah. And advocating, saying, hey, totally. I'm going to have this for my lifetime. So I don't want this big honking peg that's got a huge extension set on it and it's big and bulky. Like, you don't want that for your life. You want something that's going to be discreet. You want something that you can access when you need it and you can plug it when you don't. But for enteral therapy, I mean, big things, infection, you can get a cellulitis. I had a little baby mom. We were talking about something else and like 20 minutes later, she sends me a picture and there's this little pustule and she was developing a cellulitis. So it's really important to understand what's to be expected, what's not to be expected, what warrants a phone call or somebody following up and checking in to make sure that everything is looking okay. Redness, tenderness, big ones. Pain at the site, like, if it's an adult, like you have the ability to, you're accessing a button or a tube and you're like, okay, it usually doesn't hurt and it's super tender. And I'm looking at it and it looks a little red and it looks almost blanching, like that the circle is getting bigger. You could have a low grade fever. So unlike with a central line, which you can also have a low grade fever, which might give you some warning before you get a big spike. Those are the things that we look for. If it's draining, big things, does it smell? Is it really uncomfortable? Is it oozing? What are we looking at here? Is it pus? Does it have a granuloma? And when we talk about a granuloma, I didn't have a ton of experience with granulomas until I started my final gig at Children's, because it's what I see all the time. And, a granuloma is it's a proliferation of cells and they weep and they are very vascular and they bleed and they look icky and they can be more uncomfortable to the person looking at it than to the person who has it. But, prevention, if we can control what we can control, the better off we'll be. And that's usually taking care of it when you first get it in, and making sure that you're not, that you're immobilizing it, so it's not spinning all over the place, because the spinning and the friction and the irritation is what causes sometimes granulation tissue to form. But you can also have families who do everything right and do everything perfect, and the kid still gets one, or the patients, the adult still gets a granuloma. They're kind of set up for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Body.
Right. And it's kind of a drag, but those are things that we can work through, and we can certainly get you to, a place where you're comfortable and you're good with what your options are. So,
and cellulitis is for G tube, J tube, or a central line. You can have cellulitis.
Right. Right. Your body, the human body is incredible, because it lets you know when something's going on. It's just really knowing your body well enough and listening to it, because it's always trying to tell you, and you may not want to listen because you're like, I got stuff to do. I'm busy. I got a busy life. I had plans. I don't want to have to think about this, but your body's always giving you little hints when you need to listen. Right.
Precisely.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Always listen to your body.
Yeah,
for sure. All right. So we've talked about the technical side of PN care, and EN. So lines, routines, education, but what about just zooming out for a moment? So beyond checklists and training, what do you notice families need the most during those first few weeks? I mean, we talked about the initial, getting home, having those initial teaches, but those first few weeks where now you're trying to establish that new norm, trying to figure out what do you think? What do you notice?
Well, it's validation, right? They need validation that they're doing a good job, that they are, that they have got all the tools in their toolkit are available, and that they're doing a good job, because it's an incredible adjustment. It's an incredible gift to be able to go home, but it is incredibly stressful. And giving yourself space and grace. And I think that's probably one of the greatest things that a nurse can do, is to provide that support, and kind of just unwavering, here's what we have. You are doing an incredible job. If there's things that you can offer, or things that you can, support them by, if it's either just reinstruction or education, or things that you can do, you do that along the way, but you do it in a way that's supportive and is therapeutic. It's not judging. It's not making somebody feel like they're inadequate, or that they're not doing a good job. Because I've not walked in your shoes. I've been beside you, but I've not walked in your shoes. And as a mother, as a woman, as a grandmother, I think families are harder on themselves than anybody ever would be, right? So it's giving people the grace and encouragement and support, and just sometimes it's just it's listening, right? Probably the most important thing is validation and listening, and advocating, right? For me, that has been my biggest passion, and I hope that's on my stone when I go. But I want to be an advocate, and I fight for families so that their voices are heard, right? Because that's really the biggest gift we can give as practitioners, is validation, empowering, and making sure that you are an active participant and you have a say in how your life goes, right?
Yep.
Yes, that's great.
Yep.
So you were talking about the confidence and the mindset shifts and all that. So once you have that mindset shift, that confidence, then let's look at once you start your actual routines, like start living your real life, as I like to call it. Or living your actual life. Once those families find the rhythm, how do you see the nutrition support, whichever, beginning to fit into their everyday lives? And how do you, because you're with families for a long, we're talking about these two ladies specifically, right? So you're with these families for a long time. How do you see them starting to shift to normal life?
It's time, and it's experience, and there are some who will require more, right? Who will require more support, and there are others. You got to let them fly, right? And that's the whole reason we do what we do, is so that you go home and you get to live your life. If it means going back to work, if it means going to a kid's softball game, if it means having your kid play, or do dance or do gymnastics or do whatever it is that they want to do. That's why you started this party, right? So honestly, I think the greatest gift that we can do is recognize, it's, as I said, it's like Nanny McPhee. Then you let them go and you say, okay, I'm here, right? I'm here for you and I will support you. And you can call me with any questions that you have and we will be here for you, but you got this. And we're going to see you, because that's the nature of this beast, right? You know that with nutrition support, it's lifetime or long term, so that there will be different changes and different valleys and peaks along the way. And we recognize them, but support you in it, so that, again, your quality of life is the best that it can possibly be, knowing that you have people available to you whenever you need it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then quality of life, but that brings me to lifestyle. So what lifestyle or emotional changes do you see patients or caregivers? I think more of patients, since I am a patient.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Or caregivers face that aren't usually talked about. What are some taboo topics?
So I think too, like during the part where we're doing all the training and we're doing all the teaching and there's all the support, but then we let you go, right? And we go to the next and we do, we're doing the same thing, getting somebody ready to go home, and then you're doing it, right? And there's this feeling, I think, when you have all the support at the beginning and you feel like you're a community and you're getting all of the support, but then you're doing it. And then it's like, wow, this is real. Like, this is just, where's the glamour in this? Like, there's nothing, like, I'm just every day I'm doing the same thing and I have to do the same thing, which is when it's really important for us as practitioners to check in to make sure that things are going okay, that you're feeling supported, but also introductions to support groups and other people who are living your life, because no one understands it or knows it better than somebody who's living it. Right? I am a huge proponent in support groups and having relationships. I mean, I can't speak to it because it's not me, but I do know that, Gaby, I know that you're doing it. I know that there are support groups and there are people, there are women, there are friends who you have made these connections because they are also living their lives and having that common connection of this is what we're doing. And I think you mentioned too, Crystal, like, I think you said something about Oli, right? Oli is huge because you get to go to a place and have a connection with a group of people who are going through what you're going through, right? And there is that definite connection and just camaraderie that goes along with it. So, right? I mean,
I always say, like, find your people, because we do come across a lot of people. We were sharing with Crystal, like, how Jayme and I were trained and how we came home.
Yeah.
But in reality, like, a lot of people we meet, they're barely trained or not trained at all. And those are the people, like, we've met along the way in these support groups that we guide. And we're not nurses or providers, but we're teaching them what we were taught.
Right.
And that's made a huge difference.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so scary to me because, like, to expect that somebody's going to have this life-changing moment where they're going to be required to do these cares and to perform these cares and to not have the support and to not have the education and to not have the training, because you've basically set them up to fail. I mean, you can't be successful. This isn't, I mean, well, there is the time of YouTube and there are videos and there are other things, but you also want to make sure that the people who are training you know what they're talking about, right? That's the hard part, because the gift of the 21st century is YouTube and AI and all these other things, but it's also the detriment, because you're relying on situations or people that might not necessarily be vested or have the experience that you need, right? So that hands-on.
There's a lot of videos. There's a lot of videos out there on a lot of things. Right. Changing oil, that's not how you change oil.
Right.
That's not how you put on gloves aseptically.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of Facebook groups. There's a lot of people for all different reasons, just seeking that support and care. So finding those really like structured, good places like Oli Foundation or, support groups that, everyone's just kind of looking to support each other is so valuable and so important.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't imagine. And when Gaby, you said, find your people, right? You know enough of what you're doing, and Crystal, the same, as you're doing your own care. So when somebody is telling you something that's totally does not make sense at all, you have enough experience to know, like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Nope, we're not going down that road. But there are people who don't know. So they're grasping at anything because they'll take any information because they're just trying to figure it out. So yeah, just incredibly hard.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about your life as a nurse, and I'm interested to see. I know you see tons of families, and you've been with a lot of families for many years, and I imagine as a nurse, it can get hard sometimes because you see these kids or patients, adults, get sick or in and out the hospital, all that. When work feels heavy or challenging, what keeps you motivated?
Oh, and it can be really hard because people get sick, right? And that's true in life, and things don't always go well, or you see things like you want the best for everyone, right? And it's like a parent, right? You have these aspirations and you think how this life will be and how you hope it will be. And then if it's not like that, there's frustration and there's, disappointment. There's all of these things because we're human, right? So, for me, I think it's just always been about just honest communication. Like, I don't really sugarcoat a lot of stuff. I mean, depending on the age of the person that I'm talking to, we have the difficult conversations or the uncomfortable conversations because that's life, right? And I think it comes from a place of respect. It comes from a place of honesty. And my thing was always like, you know what, you're not going to get in trouble. I'm not going to be mad at you, or you're not going to get in trouble because you're doing something that I don't think you should be doing. I think we have an honest conversation about how can we make things better so that you're able to be successful. How are we failing? How are we failing you that you're not feeling supported or that you're not feeling like you've got a good handle on this? But like anything, it's just having those opportunities and that relationship to say, I'm not comfortable with this, or I'm worried about you, and this is why. Or, and as kids are getting older, I mean, we get to navigate, well, you all get to do it, and Jayme, you already have, but it's like navigating the teenage years, right? And it's the same thing. It's like navigating the teenage years for a person and that doesn't mean that you're a teenager, but, I have patients who are, adults and who, are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and now they've kind of hit that moment of like, oh, I don't really want to do this anymore, or, oh, I'm really tired of doing this. And, all of the stuff that it entails. And when that happens as an adult, they can say they don't want to do it, and they can stop. Yeah. And, they don't have a mother or a father or somebody looking out saying, nope, I'm going to do this for you because it's important and we get it done. So it's then having the conversation of, what can we do to support you? And how can we support you? And sometimes it's letting them make the decisions that work for them, not us, because it's not about us. At the end of the day, it's not about us. It's not our life. It's their life. So that part can be really hard because you just want to I'm just going to go live with you and I'll take, care of you, and we'll get this, and we'll get this done. So, stepping back, having a great group to work with, and having the ability for me is to be able to to talk to somebody and say, okay, I'm really struggling with this because this is what I think is happening. This is what I see is happening. I feel like we're not being effective here. And that part is hard. It is hard. So it's just, again, you talk about space and grace. It's also giving yourself space and grace so that it's okay to take a breath and kind of just take a seat.
Yeah. I love that you kind of go for transparency.
Me too.
That like that is because it means so much, and meeting patients where they're at and just telling, listening, like listening, and then, figuring out next steps is just so important. And I think that means so much to us as patients and families.
Right.
But since this episode is about and a part of Nurses Week, I just want to reflect for a moment. So what does Nurses Week mean to you personally, especially since you were Broadway and now you're a nurse?
No. Yeah. I mean, Nurses Week, it's recognition, right? It's recognition of things that are done in the profession itself, right? And how far the profession has come. And the expectations are so different than they were when I started out 40 years ago, right? I started out 40 years ago as a bedside nurse. And that's, I went to a diploma school. I wanted to be a bedside nurse. I wanted hands-on, and I was doing it from my third month of my freshman year in nursing school. So that when I graduated from nursing school, I was ready to go. But it was very much a mindset of what can I do for my patients, right? What can I do for them? How can I take care of them? How can I fix this? How can I do this? And with growth and just kind of looking through a different lens, it's also, again, it's about how do you teach someone to fish, right? It's like, how do you teach them to do something so that they can be independent, so that they don't need you. They just need to live their lives, right? So that you are someone who is able to pass something on, to educate, to advocate, so that their needs are met, but you're also able to kind of look at the big picture, right? And I will say one of probably with Nurses Week, and especially like Children's, is they are so incredible. How I came to Children's, just so you know. So I was teaching. I was all over the country. I was at Boston Children's all the time, teaching. And a position came up for home PN. And I was like, oh, I want that position because it sounds great. It's right up my alley. I want to do it. And I applied for it, and they wouldn't let me apply for it because I didn't have my bachelor's degree in nursing. And they're a magnet institution, and incredibly strong nursing. Our leadership, nursing leadership, is just they're incredible. So I, kind of said, all right, fine. I don't have to work there. I won't work there. It'll be fine. And I stewed in it for about 6 months, and then I'm like, nobody's going to tell me that I can't take this job. So I went back to school. And at 55, I got my bachelor's and did it at first kind of like, I'll show you, I can do this. But it was an incredible experience because I looked at it again through a different lens. I kind of looked at it through the liberal arts base. I wouldn't change anything how I got my nursing degree because I truly believe the hands-on skill set that I had working as an old diploma nurse, working in a hospital, getting my stripes, it made me the nurse that I am. But I also think that the profession of nursing is ever changing, ever growing, and we're not a handmaid, right? We're not the accompaniment to a physician. And that was really, it was kind of the thought of nurses back in the day that, you were an accompaniment. You were the handmaiden to the physician. The physician did everything and you followed his direction. And I say his because there weren't many females. And you did what you were told. And you had kind of that mindset. And nursing is not like that anymore. I am one of 5 girls in my family. 4 out of the 5 are nurses. 3 out of the 4 are advanced practice nurses. So they're nurse practitioners. One is a DNP. One is in legislation. The other is in transplant. So they are leading the charge in so many ways that my mother, who's 94, was, she was an old diploma nurse, and that's what she did. But she was an extension of the physician, though she would tell you she never was, because my mother was also very independent and had her own mindset of how things were supposed to be. We all get that from her. But nursing is just, it's like one of those incredible professions where you get to fundamentally impact and change someone's, trajectory of how their life is going to be, but you also have the art and science behind it, right? So I think that part is just, it's really incredible, that just the ability that you have, and always, in lifelong learning too. I mean, you're always kind of, it's never stagnant. Things are changing. So
yeah,
you're kind of just moving forward. And yeah, I just think that, to me, that's the coolest part of nursing, because it's ever changing, and, it's evolving all the time.
Well, we think you're a fabulous nurse. When we were trying to think about, we were like, we want to do something for Nurses Week. We're like, well, who could? And Gabby and I were both like, Carol. Carol's going to be the best. I mean, you're just so amazing, and we thank you for the care and education and compassion that you bring, and to help us see the perspective of a nurse, especially when going into someone's home, and being able to have that really relational care and not transactional care, because that's what home care is all about, is really building those relationships. And you're a perfect example of it. And I love that now you're in a hospital setting, and you can be that bridge, and you're there to support our patients and families while we go through this journey. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you. And, I think too, and you've seen it, I'm sure, like one of the big changes too in healthcare. I mean, as Crystal, you can, as an adult person who is, living your best life, doing what you're doing, not, just kind of moving forward, you are a consumer, right? And consumerism for healthcare is huge, because it used to be that no matter what you got, you were like, okay, I guess this is what it is and I'll take it. But there are so many choices, and there are so many options as a consumer in healthcare, so that you have the ability and the right to say, no, this isn't good enough. I want better.
Yeah.
And I want to partner in the care that I receive, so that I am a participant and a partner in this process, not just somebody you're telling me how to do something, and if I don't do it your way, then it's wrong, or I'm not going to follow you anymore because you're not doing it my way. And I think consumerism has become huge, so that, there's very much kind of this mindset of like, we're a partnership here. So how can we make the best of life, and what are your goals? What are your goals? Never mind what do we want to get accomplished at the end of the day, but what are your goals? So I think that part is huge.
We want to thank you for tuning in with us on Unclamped. We hope today's conversation reminded you that every diagnosis holds a story, one of strength, compassion, and connection. We want to give a heartfelt thank you to our sponsor, Abibo RX, for their commitment to supporting patients and families through their nutrition support journey. Their dedication makes conversations like this possible and provides a platform for the patient voice. We'd also love to hear from you too. If you have a story to share or a topic you'd like us to explore, reach out anytime at nutritiongroup4all@gmail.com. And be sure to find us on YouTube, follow along on our social media, and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.